One of the stories that we've pulled up quite a bit is the Help America vote verification system. So let me pull this up once again. We have the week ending March 30th, and we'll take a look over at our good friend Texas. Now, we brought this up several times. The Social Security Administration says 225,000 people registered to vote without IDs. 190,000 matches were found. 4,515 were deceased. When it came to Missouri, apparently the statement was that they were doing voter roll. They were cleaning up the voter rolls and verifying their voter rolls. But the HAVV, according to SSA, is only for new voter registrants, not for you to clean your logs. It would make sense that they were doing that. That's why there's so many. But Texas issued a statement saying it's not happening and that it must be an error. So, Harmeet, I'm wondering, you work with the RNC, if you guys are aware of what this is and why it's happening. Because, well, if Texas were to flip blue, and there has been speculation it may go blue. Maybe many people from California move to Texas, and Texas is winner take all. Democrats need only one swing state. Not even. If Missouri and Texas both turned blue, Biden wins. Trump could win every swing state. Biden will win if he gets those two. So I'm wondering if you guys have seen the story. What do you think it might mean? Or what are the plans the RNC has for dealing with ballot harvesting and other initiatives?
Well, I don't know what the plans are specifically. I'm not actively involved in any of that. I'm not part of the RNC's management at this point. I am assured that there are plans, but what the good news is that there are outside groups as well who are focusing on these issues. And Turning Point USA is one. I know there's some apps out there that folks are looking for. There's an app a friend of mine has made called Vici, and they have a whole plan to use, sort of gamification to recruit citizens to help get their fellow citizens to vote. But the problem is that in most of the United States, efforts to impose voter ID requirements or even a hard requirement at the registration phase have been dismantled by the left. And again, well-funded, liberal, so-called nonprofits that are really political in nature have systematically opposed every attempt by red states to impose voter ID to confirm eligibility, which now Republicans are coming around to, that we really have to up the ante on this. But I was just looking this up right now. In Texas, you can avoid the voter ID requirement when it comes to registering to vote by filling out an affidavit that there's a hardship, a substantial impediment declaration. And with that, you can avoid the voter ID requirement, which is, when you're talking about tens of thousands of people doing that, suddenly that doesn't look like tens of thousands of people having a problem finding their ID or what have you. It seems like something systematic, right?
If it's true that 1.5 million, non-citizens, illegals or otherwise, have registered in Texas, it certainly sounds like Texas will be a Democrat state this election.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I'm sure people are looking into this. This happened 2 weeks ago, April 4th. The Secretary of State released a statement confirming that individuals are not required to have an ID to register to vote. They only have to produce a Social Security number. Well, some refugees get Social Security numbers. Yeah. And so, that's the problem. Now you're relying on them, and this is the case throughout the United States, to self-certify. For example, when we've driven voter registration to the DMV, which of course is, like we all know, the most competent arm of the government, you self-certify there that you are eligible to be a United States voter. And the problem is complicated by the fact that in many states, increasingly, and in urban elections, you don't have to be a citizen to vote in those elections. So varies by state law, of course, but in California and San Francisco, the notorious example is illegal aliens are entitled to vote for school board because their children, that the argument is, our children are educated in the schools. So there's a whole second tier system. So they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars setting up the system. And at the end of the day, 43 people or something like that registered to vote under that system. So it really blurs, and that's intentional. The intent is to confuse or, enable people who are not citizens to vote in this country. And then 4 years from now or 6 years from now, there's going to be rioting over that issue. Why aren't we allowed to vote in federal elections as well?
Right.
And Congress could actually shut that down. I started looking at this issue almost a decade ago. Congress could shut that down by passing a law saying that in the United States, And other people who are Federalist objections to this, but I think it's a real national problem at this point. And you could condition it on federal funding or what have you, but you could make a rule that says in the United States, you cannot vote in any election unless you are a United States citizen. And so that means school board or local municipal city council or whatever. And they could tie it to funding. If you want any federal funding to run your elections, which, by the way, they all want, they're going to comply with that, like the seatbelt rules and other rules like that.
What about you had Mike Johnson and Donald Trump on Friday talking together about how there should be, how Johnson was going to propose a bill requiring people to prove that they are U.S. citizens before they're allowed to vote.
Right. So the left is responding to that by saying, well, that's already the law. Correct. It's already the law that in federal elections, you have to be a citizen. The problem is you don't have to produce ID to prove that you're a citizen. You simply check a box and say, I'm a citizen, I'm entitled to vote. And indeed, there have been many instances where, legitimate American green card holders, legal residents, have voted in federal elections because they checked the wrong box when they were registering their vehicle or what have you. They updated their voter registration. They got themselves on the voter rolls, and then they got the ballots because the ballots were mailed to them. And then they voted. And now they're felons. Effectively, they can never become American citizens if the law is applied correctly, because that's a excludable offense. You can actually be deported.
Which it ought to
for
be,
that.
really. I mean,
yeah, it ought to be. But on the other hand,
it shouldn't be so
somebody who
easy.
doesn't speak English as their first language goes to get their driver's license and they check the wrong box. Someone mails them a ballot, and boom, they become disqualified to be a citizen in a lawful country. Now, is that really happening? I'm not aware of people being deported for that. The problem is rather the opposite problem, which I think is Democrats encouraging people to vote without proper authorization.
I think one of the big plays they'll make is, you alluded to it already with, hey, why can't we vote in federal elections? They've already started using the phrase undocumented citizens, and they'll try and shift the language, and they'll make the argument that citizen simply means a person who lives here, so that in 10, 20 years, they can say, hey, we can't have it a two-tiered system of citizenship where if you're an undocumented citizen, you can't vote. All citizens should be allowed to vote. And then they'll try and make it so that the moment you cross that border, you can vote.
Well, I think that is the view of the left. I think that is absolutely the view of the left. And you hear it from educated leftists who say, well, what do you mean they don't pay taxes? They pay taxes. They pay sales tax.
Oh, yeah.
They pay, their taxes are withheld because they're working, they've entered their social security number. They're paying into the system. No, they're not. That's a lie. And but the dirty secret of all of this is, why is this even controversial on the right? Because many American Republican donors have made their money off of the backs of illegal workers in their businesses, in agriculture, in meatpacking, you name it. In every industry like that where a lot of cheap labor is required, it is convenient and inexpensive and improves their bottom line and their sales to be able to compete with Mexico by simply hiring undocumented workers. That's a dirty fact.
Yeah, that's why Trump's a threat to them, because Trump actually had raids on chicken processing plants when he was president, and it resulted in, like, I think 800 deportations.
That's right, in like Alabama or something.
Yeah, and then these
Those
companies,
were Republican donors.
and then Democrats made the arguments, but nobody wants to do these jobs. And then
Right.
sure enough, tons of people showed up who were Americans who wanted those jobs.
Yeah.
And there was a reporter who asked, sir, are you here for the job fair? I am. Why would you want to take a job like this? He goes, what do you mean? It pays more money than my last job. It was that simple. It was a better job. So they lie. What they want to do is they want to compete with non-citizens so that American workers are displaced. American worker says, look, standard of living here, I need money for my family. I got to make 15, 20 bucks an hour. And they go, nah, we're going to give this non-citizen $7 an hour. He'll take it.
Well, what Americans want, it's not that there are jobs Americans are unwilling to do. Americans want a fair wage and good working conditions.
Right.
And that's, and the dignity that comes along with earning your own living and supporting your family.
That costs money.
I don't know. That's what I want.
The people who aren't from this country are like, look, I make $3 an hour back where I'm from. If I can get $7, that'd be fantastic. I don't care what the conditions are. And then these companies exploit them.
And they put them in dorms and they take their passports and they don't let them leave and they do it.
I remember I watched.
Not in California, by the way. They all have lawyers. They all have
yeah.
Marxist lawyers too. No, that's not happening. People are getting paid pretty well to do jobs that Americans would be willing to do.
Oh, I went to the Salton Sea during the drought coverage, and I met some young guys who were skateboarding. They said their parents were they harvested fruit on fruit farms not too far away, and they got $20 an hour, and they were not citizens. And he was like, he was born here. His parents.
Cesar Chavez would be overwhelmed.
Yeah, he said that he was born there, and so, he's a citizen, but his parents aren't. So he tries to be careful. But his parents make about $20 an hour each collecting the fruit, harvesting the fruit. And I was like, $20 an hour? And this was 10 years ago. I was like, wow. A lot of Americans would love to have those jobs. But the issue isn't so much about the pay, it's about the legal requirements. If it's an American citizen working there, you've got liability issues. If it's a non-citizen, they simply tell them, hey, anything bad happens, you're getting kicked out of the country.
That doesn't work anymore, actually.
Not
Like
in
I said,
California?
there's a lot of lawyers for all people on the West Coast. They're still, but for a business, all it takes is a couple of bucks worth of profit. So you could pay an American slightly higher, you can pay somebody a little bit less. And, our entire restaurant industry is built on that. All the food we eat is built on illegal labor in this country. And,
Wow.
That's what Chuck Schumer always
it's a
says.
fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About why we should allow.
That's why we should
masses
allow it,
of
because
illegal immigration.
of
That's
course,
what Chuck Schumer
yeah,
says. Yeah.
I mean, look at what stuff costs in Norway. Like it costs like 5 times what it costs here in America, because like not that many people live there, and they're all kind of very tightly controlled labor market, very strictly controlled labor market.
Man, people got to bring back the small town. Up in Martinsburg, the diner closed, and it's really sad.
Oh no.
Yeah, it closed a while ago.
That's too
I
bad.
remember there was a place on the north side. There was this, the city's developing. It's getting bigger. Chain restaurants are coming in. And there was this classic looking 50s diner, hole in the wall, that clearly was from the 50s and had not been repaired since. And you'd walk in, and it was one of those diners where it's like a thin strip. You can
yeah.
you can sit at the counter, and then that's all you had. And I think it was just one old guy who made all the food. You'd walk in, sit down. You want a burger, fries, pancakes, waffle, sausage, whatever, basic diner stuff. And he'd make it right behind you, and then he'd flip it over and hand it to you. And then I remember a few years ago, went back for the holidays, and it was just gone. Shut down, out of business. What I assume happened is the old guy just either retired or died, and there was no one to inherit this, like,
Right.
this classic local place. And so what's happening now is these businesses close, the chains come in, and you're getting this plasticification of our cities. And that's
the
nightmarish.
de-authentication.
Well,
of it.
look, a lot of that, of course, was accelerated by COVID.
Yeah.
And even in foodie Mecca where I live, San Francisco, the majority of the restaurants have shut. Like our favorite restaurants are pretty much all gone. And the ones that are there are suddenly charging like $30 for an entree. It's crazy.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.